Mirrors of Manipulation, from Hitler to Musk. Chapter 1: The Spark of Curiosity. Dr. Emily Carter had always been fascinated by history's ability to echo into the present. Her cluttered study reflected her life's passion. Books on political revolutions, leadership, and social movements surrounded her like old friends. Tonight, she was embarking on her ambitious project yet, using AI to uncover parallels between historical and modern leaders. Emily had developed a sophisticated AI program capable of analyzing speeches, actions, and public responses across eras. Its purpose wasn't to make controversial claims, but to highlight patterns that shaped societies. She believed that by understanding these patterns, people could learn to make better decisions about leadership and influence. The screen glowed softly as Emily activated the AI. Data poured across it. Speeches from Adolf Hitler, campaign slogans from Donald Trump, and public reactions to both. Emily leaned closer, captivated. The AI's algorithms were tracing connections she had only speculated about before. The first results were startling. Phrases like Deutschland erwache and Make America Great Again appeared side by side, stark in their similarity. Both leaders had risen during times of upheaval, using nationalism as a rallying cry. Their words tapped into fears and aspirations, turning slogans into movements. Emily jotted down notes, her mind racing. She couldn't ignore the weight of the comparison, even as she reminded herself to approach it with care. Historical contexts were vastly different, but the techniques, charismatic rhetoric, emotional appeals, and promises of revival were undeniably alike. As the AI continued, Emily reflected on the power of language. Us versus them, she murmured. It was a simple formula, but devastatingly effective. Leaders throughout history had wielded it to divide and conquer. The screen flickered, presenting a montage of Hitler's fiery speeches and Trump's impassioned rallies. The parallels were as fascinating as they were troubling. Emily leaned back, overwhelmed yet exhilarated. She had barely scratched the surface, but the implications were clear. History wasn't just a record of past events, it was a mirror, reflecting humanity's enduring struggles and triumphs. And with tools like AI, perhaps they could finally learn to break free from its darker cycles. Chapter 2: The Power of Rhetoric. The AI's revelations came in torrents of data, each comparison more compelling than the last. Emily was captivated as it dissected the rhetorical styles of Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump, leaders separated by decades yet bound by their mastery of language. Hitler's speeches, meticulously documented in history books, were a testament to the power of oratory. He spoke with fire and precision, his words stoking the fears and frustrations of a post-World War I Germany. His slogan, Deutschland erwache, wasn't just a phrase, it was a rallying cry that ignited the collective psyche of a nation. The AI juxtaposed Hitler's rhetoric with Trump's. Videos of Trump's campaign rallies played in one window, while archival footage of Hitler's speeches ran in another. Emily was struck by the similarities in their delivery, the pacing, the emphasis on certain words, the deliberate pauses that allowed their audiences to cheer. Trump's slogan, Make America Great Again, had a similar resonance. Like Hitler's rallying cry, it promised a return to a perceived golden age, a time when things were better, simpler. The message was direct, emotional, and easy to grasp, qualities that made it effective in mobilizing large groups of people. Emily took notes as the AI continued its analysis. Both leaders used the us versus them narrative to great effect, positioning themselves as champions of the people against an oppressive other. For Hitler, it was the Jews, communists, and perceived enemies of the Aryan race. For Trump, it was immigrants, the media, and the political establishment. What fascinated Emily most was the emotional power of their words. The AI highlighted specific phrases, showing how they tapped into deep-seated fears and aspirations. Hitler spoke of betrayal and vengeance. Trump emphasized pride and restoration. Both framed their messages as a call to arms, urging their followers to join a movement that would save their respective nations. Emily leaned back in her chair, the weight of the comparison settling over her. It wasn't about equating the men, but understanding the methods. Language was a weapon, and in the hands of a skilled leader, it could shape the destiny of nations. She stared at the screen, a thought forming in her mind. If rhetoric could be this powerful, could it also be a tool for healing? Chapter 3: Masters of Media. Emily watched as the AI's next set of findings materialized on the screen, a cascade of data detailing the media strategies employed by Joseph Goebbels and Elon Musk. Though vastly different in time, context, and goals, both figures wielded media with unparalleled precision, shaping public opinion on a grand scale. Goebbels, the Nazi regime's minister of propaganda, revolutionized the use of radio, newspapers, and film to consolidate Hitler's power. Under his guidance, Germany's media became a single voice, echoing Nazi ideology. Every film, broadcast, and poster was meticulously crafted to stoke fear, bolster nationalism, and dehumanize perceived enemies. Goebbels' mastery lay in his ability to manipulate emotions, using media not just to inform, but to control. The AI contrasted this with Elon Musk's command of modern media. While Goebbels had centralized control, Musk thrived in the decentralized chaos of social media, particularly Twitter. Musk's tweets, sometimes playful, sometimes provocative, reached millions in seconds, often setting the agenda for public discourse. Whether announcing groundbreaking ventures like SpaceX or stirring controversy with a single sentence, Musk knew how to capture and hold attention. Emily studied the side-by-side comparisons, noting both the evolution and continuity of media influence. Goebbels used emerging technologies of the 1930s to create a propaganda machine unlike any the world had seen. Musk, by contrast, operated in a world where everyone had access to a platform, yet his voice stood out above the noise. Both men, the AI suggested, understood the mechanics of attention. Goebbels created spectacles to draw people into Hitler's vision. Musk, through memes and dramatic announcements, turned complex technologies into accessible narratives, captivating millions. Yet the purposes couldn't have been more different. Goebbels used his influence to sustain a regime of terror, while Musk's focus lay on innovation and disruption, albeit with ethical questions trailing behind. Emily scribbled notes furiously. The AI highlighted another connection, the ethical dilemmas their influence posed. Goebbels' propaganda fueled atrocities, while Musk's unfiltered tweets often spread misinformation or spiked financial markets. Both raised the question, what happens when a single voice wields disproportionate influence over public opinion? Emily leaned back, feeling both awe and unease. Media, she realized, wasn't just a tool, it was a force capable of shaping entire eras. The screen glowed softly, waiting for her next command. Chapter 4: Charisma and Controversy. The AI's findings grew more nuanced as it moved beyond rhetoric and media, focusing now on the cult of personality surrounding Hitler, Goebbels, Trump, and Musk. Emily watched the screen, captivated by the ways charisma could shape perception and amplify influence. Hitler's charisma had been meticulously cultivated. His oratory skills, combined with carefully staged public appearances, painted him as a savior of Germany. The AI highlighted archival footage of rallies where throngs of people roared in approval, their adulation almost tangible. Hitler's appeal wasn't solely ideological, it was emotional. His ability to project confidence, strength, and resolve made him an almost mythical figure to his followers. Goebbels, too, had his share of magnetism, though it was quieter, more insidious. The AI displayed excerpts of his speeches, each calculated to evoke trust and loyalty. Unlike Hitler's fiery delivery, Goebbels relied on cold precision, manipulating facts to align with the Nazi narrative. His genius lay in his ability to make lies feel like truth, his charisma rooted in intellect and strategy rather than passion. The screen shifted to contemporary figures, and Emily leaned forward. Trump's appeal lay in his unfiltered persona. To his supporters, he wasn't a polished politician but a relatable figure, a truth-teller unafraid to challenge the establishment. The AI displayed clips of his rallies, where chants of "lock her up" and "build the wall" echoed with fervor. Trump's charisma thrived on his ability to create an us-versus-them dynamic, positioning himself as the voice of the forgotten. Musk's charisma, by contrast, was tied to his vision. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a futurist. His announcements about colonizing Mars or revolutionizing transportation painted him as a genius unbound by convention. Yet the AI noted the controversies trailing him, tweets that tanked stock values, impulsive statements that sparked debates. Musk's unpredictability was both his allure and his Achilles heel. Emily scribbled notes, marveling at the similarities in how these figures inspired devotion. The AI highlighted another pattern. how charisma often blinded followers to flaws. Hitler's atrocities were excused in the name of nationalism. Goebbels' deceptions were justified as loyalty. Trump's polarizing statements were dismissed as authenticity. Musk's missteps were seen as eccentricities of a genius. Emily sat back, the implications weighing heavily. Charisma, she realized, was a double-edged sword. In the hands of a visionary, it could inspire progress. In the hands of a manipulator, it could lead to destruction. Chapter 5: The Ethics of Innovation. As the AI delved deeper, Emily felt a growing unease. The next comparison focused on innovation, its potential for progress and its capacity for harm. The screen illuminated contrasting figures. Elon Musk, the modern entrepreneur promising a future of technological marvels, and Joseph Goebbels, the propagandist who weaponized innovation to devastating effect. Goebbels had been a pioneer of media manipulation. Under his direction, Nazi Germany transformed radio, film, and print into tools of mass indoctrination. The AI highlighted key innovations, weekly radio addresses, cinematic propaganda, and meticulously staged public events that elevated Hitler's message to an art form. Goebbels understood that technology could amplify a lie, turning it into a belief that shaped nations. The screen shifted to Musk, whose innovations in technology painted a very different picture. His ventures, from Tesla's electric vehicles to SpaceX's exploration of Mars, had redefined entire industries. The AI displayed clips of Musk's dramatic announcements, reusable rockets, neural interfaces, and AI-driven breakthroughs. Emily couldn't deny his impact. He was a visionary whose work had changed the world. Yet the AI was careful to point out Musk's ethical blind spots. Musk's ventures often danced on the edge of controversy. His Neuralink project raised questions about privacy and autonomy, while his Twitter acquisition sparked debates about free speech and misinformation. Unlike Goebbels' overtly destructive intentions, Musk's challenges lay in the unintended consequences of innovation. But the parallels were clear. Both figures harnessed technology to influence human behavior on a massive scale. Emily leaned forward, studying the patterns. Both men understood that innovation was a means to an end. For Goebbels, the end was the consolidation of Nazi power. For Musk, it was the realization of a tech-driven utopia. Yet both approaches relied on public trust, and both raised profound ethical questions. How far should one go in the pursuit of progress? And who holds innovators accountable? The AI concluded with a sobering insight. Innovation, like charisma or rhetoric, was a tool. Its impact depended not on the tool itself, but on the intentions of the one wielding it. Emily scribbled the thought into her notebook, her mind racing with implications. As the screen dimmed, Emily couldn't shake the question lingering in her mind. Could humanity's pursuit of progress ever be balanced with the weight of ethical responsibility? Chapter 6: The Seduction of Simple Solutions. Emily took a sip of her now lukewarm tea as the AI began its next analysis, this time exploring one of the most dangerous yet effective tools of leadership: the promise of simple solutions. The screen displayed a timeline, connecting the dots between Adolf Hitler's rise to power, Donald Trump's populist movement, and their shared ability to distill complex issues into digestible and often misleading narratives. Hitler's Germany was rife with economic despair, social unrest, and the lingering wounds of World War I. His rhetoric offered an antidote: a simple, compelling vision of national revival. Blame the Treaty of Versailles, the communists, the Jews, he declared, positioning himself as the singular force capable of restoring Germany's greatness. The AI underlined how this oversimplification obscured the true complexities of the country's struggles, but appealed deeply to a populace desperate for answers. The AI shifted focus to Trump, whose campaign strategies echoed this approach. His slogan, "Make America Great Again," was as broad as it was powerful. It promised a return to a better time, unspecified, yet vivid in the minds of his supporters. Trump's rhetoric tackled issues like immigration, trade, and national pride with similarly sweeping statements. Build a wall, bring back jobs, drain the swamp. Each solution was straightforward, almost reductive, but effective in rallying a disenchanted electorate. Emily jotted down notes, intrigued by the universality of this tactic. The AI highlighted public reactions to both leaders, showing how these simple solutions divided societies. For their supporters, the clarity of the message was a beacon of hope. For their detractors, it was a dangerous oversimplification that ignored underlying complexities. The AI offered another insight. The power of simple solutions wasn't just in their delivery, but in their timing. Both leaders rose during moments of crisis when societies were particularly vulnerable to the allure of clarity and decisiveness. Hitler's promises came to a Germany on the brink, Trump's to an America fractured by economic and cultural divides. The simplicity of their messages provided a sense of control in chaotic times. Emily leaned back, reflecting on the implications. She had always believed in nuance, in the need to grapple with complexity. Yet here was proof of how seductive simplicity could be, how it could inspire hope but also blind people to the consequences. The AI's work was unsettling but vital. If societies were to resist the pull of oversimplification, they needed to understand why it was so powerful. Chapter 7: Patterns of Power. The AI hummed steadily as Emily watched the screen fill with data that connected patterns across time. The narrative it was forming was clear. Power, whether wielded in the 1930s or the present day, followed certain universal laws. These patterns were not just about individuals, but the societies that elevated them. The AI highlighted a chilling truth. Power often thrived on division. In Hitler's Germany, the division was starkly racial and ideological. The Jews, communists, and other minority groups were scapegoated as the root of the nation's struggles. Hitler positioned himself as the unifier who could protect the true Germans. The Nazi regime fostered this division deliberately, knowing that fear and hatred were powerful motivators. The screen then transitioned to Trump's America. Here, the divisions were not as orchestrated, but were amplified by Trump's rhetoric. His speeches often targeted immigrants, the media, and political elites, framing them as enemies of the American people. The AI highlighted key phrases from his rallies. "They're taking our jobs," "fake news," "the deep state." Each phrase deepened existing societal divides, creating a narrative where Trump was the protector of a vulnerable populace. Emily leaned closer, intrigued by the universality of these tactics. Power, it seemed, was not just about charisma or control. It was about perception. Leaders like Hitler and Trump thrived by shaping how their followers saw the world, defining allies and enemies, and offering themselves as the solution to perceived threats. The AI added another layer, the role of society in sustaining these patterns. In both eras, people were drawn to strong leaders during times of crisis. Economic despair, cultural upheaval, and a sense of uncertainty made societies more susceptible to simplistic narratives and divisive rhetoric. The AI's analysis suggested that these patterns were not inevitable but recurrent, arising whenever fear outweighed critical thinking. Emily scribbled furiously in her notebook. If these patterns were cyclical, then understanding them was crucial to breaking the cycle. Leaders like Hitler and Trump were products of their times, but they were also architects of their own power. The question was, how could societies resist falling into the same traps? As the AI presented its final conclusions for the chapter, Emily felt a mix of awe and apprehension. The patterns were clear, but so was the challenge. Power wasn't just about the leaders who wielded it, it was about the people who allowed them to do so. Chapter 8: The Turning Point. Emily leaned back in her chair, staring at the screen filled with the AI's meticulous analysis. The conclusions were unsettling but enlightening. She had to find a way to convey these patterns of power, rhetoric, and media manipulation to a wider audience. The challenge wasn't just understanding history, but preventing it from repeating. As she mulled over the implications, the AI presented its next observation: turning points. Every leader, every movement, every era reached a moment when choices determined whether history would veer toward progress or catastrophe. For Adolf Hitler, the turning point had been the Reichstag fire in 1933. The AI displayed archival footage and documents showing how the Nazis had used the incident to consolidate power, suppress dissent, and pass the Enabling Act. That singular event transformed Hitler's leadership from political opportunism into a dictatorship. The AI shifted to Donald Trump's presidency. His turning point, the AI suggested, came on January 6, 2021, the storming of the U.S. Capitol. The screen filled with images and headlines from that fateful day. What began as a rally to contest election results spiraled into violence and chaos, with far-reaching consequences for American democracy. While Trump's direct involvement remained debated, the AI highlighted how his rhetoric had emboldened those who stormed the Capitol. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. These events, though separated by nearly a century, shared disturbing similarities. Leaders leveraging crises, followers acting on a leader's narrative, and societies left to grapple with the aftermath. The AI's analysis suggested that such turning points often revealed the fragility of institutions and the power of collective emotion over reason. The AI concluded with a chilling observation. Turning points weren't always recognized in the moment. Hitler's rise had seemed inevitable to some, preventable to others, but undeniable only in hindsight. Similarly, Trump's legacy and the events surrounding his presidency were still being debated, their ultimate impact yet to be fully understood. Emily closed her eyes, the weight of the data pressing on her. The question wasn't whether history would repeat, it was whether society would recognize the signs in time to change course. She opened her notebook and began drafting an outline for her next presentation, determined to use this research to spark critical conversations. She didn't know if her work would change the world, but she had to try. History was more than a record of the past. It was a guide for the future. Chapter 9: Echoes Across Time. Emily stood in the lecture hall, her notebook in hand, as the audience of policymakers, academics, and media professionals settled in. Her findings, painstakingly unearthed with the help of AI, had culminated in a presentation that she hoped would resonate beyond the walls of this room. Her goal wasn't to shock, but to educate, to encourage reflection on the enduring echoes of power, rhetoric, and media influence. She began with the basics, introducing parallels between Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump, Joseph Goebbels and Elon Musk. The purpose, she explained, is not to equate them, but to understand how patterns of leadership and influence transcend time. Contexts differ, but human behavior is remarkably consistent. Her slides shifted to examples of rhetoric. She played excerpts of Hitler's speeches alongside Trump's rallies, their words emphasizing national revival and the identification of external threats. The crowd murmured as Emily highlighted the emotional resonance of their messages. Leaders who master the language of fear and hope hold immense power, she said. They tap into collective frustration and offer solutions that, while simple, often obscure underlying complexities. The next slide explored media manipulation. Emily outlined how Goebbels had centralized control over Nazi Germany's press and radio to build a propaganda machine. In contrast, Elon Musk operated in a decentralized media landscape, but wielded enormous influence through platforms like Twitter. Both understood the power of controlling narratives, she noted, though their methods and intentions vastly differed. As the presentation progressed, Emily touched on the ethical dilemmas posed by these figures. The question isn't just what leaders say or do, she argued. It's how society responds. Are we critical thinkers or passive consumers of their narratives? The final section focused on turning points. Emily described the Reichstag fire and January 6, 2021, as moments when societies faced critical choices. These events remind us that democracy and freedom are fragile, she said. It's up to us to recognize when patterns of division and manipulation begin to emerge. As she concluded, the audience erupted into applause, but Emily's focus was elsewhere. She scanned the faces before her, hoping her words had sparked not just agreement, but action. History, she believed, wasn't a fixed story. It was a dialogue, and today she had added her voice to the conversation. Chapter 10: A New Narrative. The applause faded as Emily returned to her study that evening, her mind still buzzing from the energy of the presentation. She set her notebook down on the cluttered desk, her thoughts swirling. Her work had struck a chord with the audience, but she knew the true impact would only be revealed in the actions people took after leaving that lecture hall. The AI's screen glowed softly in the dimly lit room, its quiet hum a comforting presence. Emily opened a new file and began drafting her next project. The presentation was only the beginning. Her findings had uncovered patterns of influence that stretched across time, but now she wanted to explore solutions. If history offered warnings, surely it also offered guidance. She started by reflecting on the audience's reactions. There had been moments of discomfort, particularly when she juxtaposed revered technological advancements with darker parallels from history. But discomfort, Emily thought, was necessary. It forced people to question their assumptions, to look beyond the surface of charisma, rhetoric, and innovation. Her next project, she decided, would focus on the power of collective action. If leaders could manipulate through fear and division, then societies could counteract by fostering critical thinking, empathy, and unity. She typed furiously, her ideas flowing. Education reform that taught media literacy, policies that demanded accountability from tech giants, and grassroots movements that empowered individuals to challenge simplistic narratives. As the words filled the screen, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. The patterns she had uncovered weren't inevitable, they were opportunities for intervention. The AI chimed softly, ready to assist, and she fed it new queries, this time searching for examples of societal resilience against manipulation. The results were heartening. Stories of resistance, of communities banding together to reject divisive rhetoric, of individuals using technology to promote truth rather than distort it. Emily smiled as she read, her belief in humanity's potential for progress reaffirmed. Outside, the first light of dawn crept through the window. Emily leaned back, exhausted but invigorated. Her work was far from over, but she felt hopeful. History's echoes might be powerful, but they weren't immutable. With understanding and effort, humanity could write a new narrative, one that embraced the lessons of the past to build a brighter future. She powered down the AI, closed her notebook, and stepped outside to greet the morning. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt like the future was something worth fighting for.